Welcome back. Greetings creatives, and welcome back to another fireside chat, Paint by Numbers. So we're going to work on black. Did a lot of clearing up off camera with some of this blue, but we've got through the blue, and the blue was quite a lot, so the black's quite a lot as well. So this is going to be fun. So when we get all this black done, I think you'll have a better idea of what it is. So let's just start. Grab yourself a coffee and we'll begin. It's quite thick as this paint, and it's quite warm as well, so although it was very cold this morning when I woke up, I actually had to put the heating on. Now guys, this is August. This is supposed to be summer, and I put the heating on. That's just craziness. I think I'm going to have to put some water in this. Kind of mix it up with a little bit of water, just so I can get some kind of paintable consistency. Let's just drop a little bit of water in. There we go. A couple of splashes of water, and then get a cocktail stick and give it a little mix. Very thick paint now. Just trying to do it without splashing. I'll actually do it to the side here, in case I do go wrong with it. I don't want to splash black paint on here, so I'm going to mix it up as far as I can. So that we're getting some kind of consistency I can work with. Now I think we're there. Run out of kitchen roll to clean my brush. Right, so let's go. Grab yourself a coffee. I've got a coffee. Sit back, relax and enjoy. Right, here we go. Back to the non-speaking while I do the edges phase. Because it's black, the darkest colour on here, I can't really mess up on it. I mean, I can, if I accidentally mess up on it, I can always go over it with white, but I don't really want to. I just want to get it done as quickly as possible. There's a lot of black on this, and I think once all the black and the navy has been done, I think, I'm calling it navy, but I think it's ultramarine blue, I do believe. Although it's poster paints, they don't have those fancy names, and in Paint by Numbers they don't have any names at all, they're just numbers. Okay, just edge across, because once we get to this corner here, it's very delicate. Yeah, that's that side done. Get down here, because you can correct a lot of mistakes with the black as well. So in this red I've come out a little bit too far, so I can cover that over with black and fix those mistakes. So what I've just been watching this morning is I rewatched the What We Left Behind, or Leave Behind. I can't remember what exactly. What We Left Behind, the documentary based on Deep Space Nine. It's really good. Yeah, I think the real sad part is that the actor who plays Odo is no longer with us, and he's in it. Rene Aubergenois. I always struggle with that name. Great name though. Great name. Great surname there. I could never. When I originally watched Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, I could never pronounce his name because I didn't know how to pronounce it. But as I've grown older, and you hear of other names that are spelt similar. I think in the wrestling world there's a guy called Benoit, I think, and because of that, I think I kind of got how to pronounce his name, and I think I heard some actor. I think it might be Nana Visitor. I think I heard her pronounce his name, or Aubergenois, something like that. That's how I really knew how to say it, because like a lot of us, we would say, yeah, oh, you know the guy who plays Odo, Rene something, you know him. We were just too afraid to look foolish and say it wrong. So, this is a little tiny bit of black, but trust me, there's a lot of black areas in this, which I am looking forward to painting. Yeah, so watch that. What We Left Behind. I think it's called What We Leave Behind. I think What We Leave Behind is the season finale. I think that's what that's called. And then this documentary is called What We Left Behind, and it's a great documentary with the actors, and they were speaking on, and I agree with this, but in my world, Deep Space Nine was amazing. I was an early adopter to the series, as I've said in previous videos, but I didn't actually realise. I did come to realise it later on, but I didn't realise at the time when I was buying the VHSs of Deep Space Nine. I was like, oh, this is great, this is a new Star Trek series, I love it, it's so different, I just love it. I didn't realise that a lot of Star Trek fans liked it on a ship, new Alien of the Week kind of episodic episode, where Deep Space Nine is a saga, and I loved it because of that. But a lot of Star Trek fans, I've just painted the wrong bit. Oh dear. So, not to worry. I'm not supposed to paint this bit, I'm supposed to paint this bit. Oh dear. Okay. I'll just swap 13. 13 is, it's like a red. I'm gonna have to go over it in white and then I'll fix it off camera. It's fine. It's fine, don't worry. Oh dear. It's yeah, don't worry, I can fix it. I'll fix it off camera, and then in the next video it'll be fixed. So yeah, so but I really liked the concept of Deep Space Nine, because it brought over O'Brien just to keep us there, saying, well, Chief O'Brien's there, so it's still Star Trek. They're still wearing the uniforms, although they were slightly different. So yes, it's still Star Trek. They've got the hierarchy structure: captains, commanders, ensigns, lieutenants. So that's still Star Trek. Then it was set on a space station that looked so different. I mean, later we find out that it was Cardassian architecture. Cardassian architecture is so good. It's very geometrical, and it's very precise, and it's also very overbearing as well. Very grandiose and overbearing. So we had no ship, which, to be honest, I could live with. I mean, eventually they did get a ship, but the runabouts were great, because I saw the shuttles, the shuttle pods and things from the Next Generation. To be honest, I didn't really like those shuttles. I thought they were quite basically designed, whereas the runabouts did look kind of like they had a bit more design and thought process behind them, and I was like, yeah, I do like them. And then we were introduced to, although the Bajorans had been a thing and the Cardassians were a thing, but we were introduced to their world, and we learnt about the occupation, the Cardassian occupation of Bajor, and it was the Cardassians that built Deep Space Nine. But they didn't call it Deep Space Nine, of course. They called it Terok Nor, which is a cool name. It's a cool name, Terok Nor. So yeah, I loved everything about it. And then after the occupation, they abandoned the station, and the Federation decided to take over, and they renamed it one of their deep space stations, so it became Deep Space Nine. And then the planet was below Bajor, and then they accidentally discovered a wormhole, a stable wormhole. So that brought another level of interest to the show. So all these things were happening, and I was like, yeah, I can really get on board with this show. I really do like it. But at the start, in the first few episodes of the first season, I did find it quite a strange show. I was just like, I do like it, but I kept going back to Next Generation just to get my Star Trek thing on, stabilize Star Trek in my, because I was still learning about the show and how it actually works, the kind of nature of it. And I was just like, yeah, but I do need to go back to Next Generation because I need to have my Star Trek thing going on. I'm just going to move a few things around because it's getting quite difficult to spin it. I don't want to spin it all the way, but I want to be able to spin it a little bit, and so that it remains on camera. Okay. Because I'm here, I'm still on camera, so let's just go around here. It's a bit sticky. It's warm now. Like I said, it was cold this morning. Put the heating on. Yeah, the weather's been quite crazy. Like I said, it's summer. It's summer here. But the weather's been like, it's been like at a stable 22 for the last couple of weeks. But it's been very cool and cold, and this is supposed to be the height of summer here, and I'm like, where is the summer gone? Like, August is supposed to be the hottest month of the year here. I mean, we can get it hot in May sometimes, and in September, but like August is supposed to be a guaranteed sunshine, and we're not getting that. And I was like, this is so strange. So apparently the middle of next week it's supposed to heat back up again. Yeah, I want to concentrate on doing the edges with this brush, and then I'll switch over. Yeah, so I'll switch over brushes now. I've no kitchen rope to wipe my brushes, so I've got a piece here. So I'm going to switch over to a thicker brush. Spin it around again so that it all comes on camera. Let's get the scissors. Cut this bristle off. That's this stray rogue bristle. Right. Let's get a lot of this black done. Yeah, so I really did like the documentary. I do wish they would upgrade it to HD, the show, but I was reading up about it, why they haven't, because I was actually surprised about this. But see, the upgraded Next Generation, the upgraded the original series, the upgraded Enterprise. The reason that they haven't upgraded Deep Space Nine or Voyager is because they didn't sell enough of the Blu-rays. Actually, I bought them as soon as they came out. I bought them. Obviously, I will. And watching Deep Space Nine in Blu-ray was awesome, but apparently they didn't sell enough, and they're really expensive to upgrade. I mean, they were happy to carry on doing them because Deep Space Nine would have looked awesome upgraded, the special effects and everything, but they couldn't, from a business point of view, they can't justify it because it's very expensive to upscale them, and especially with Deep Space Nine when you've got like a lot of special effects. If you're going to spend money on upscaling them and making them better, and then people aren't going to buy them, or not enough people are going to buy them. I was quite surprised that people weren't buying Next Generation and things like that in the upscale. I was quite surprised by that. I was just like, I thought everybody would have been snapping those things up, but that's not the case. So because of that, they can't justify doing Deep Space Nine. Now, what I wish they'd have done is, after they did Next Generation, instead of doing the original series and Enterprise, if they'd have done Deep Space Nine and then said, you know what, nobody's buying these, I'd have been happy with that. But as it turns out, we're not getting Deep Space Nine in Blu-ray or HD or whatever you want to call it. We're not getting it, right? So So I can kind of, I've made my peace with it. Let's put it that way. I'm not happy about it, but I've made my peace with it. Let's see how we can get in here. But I do know, I've heard on the grapevine, is after the success of Star Trek Picard Season 3, we are getting a kind of resolution to the Captain Sisko saga. If you remember in the series, he went off to be with the wormhole aliens, or as Bajorans call them, the Prophets, and that's where he went. But apparently, it's happening. It's not just being talked about. It's happening. Avery Brooks has been contacted, and they're doing it. So we'll be getting a Star Trek Sisko series, and they're also in. So that's it. That's kind of locked away that they're doing it. Also, they're in talks with Kate Mulgrew about doing Star Trek Janeway, and as we know, she's actually still making a Star Trek series, Star Trek Prodigy, which I watched a few episodes. I mean, granted, I know it's not for me. I know it's for kids, but you can tell that she's not opposed to it, because she plays Captain Janeway in that, although she's a hologram. So we know she's definitely up for that, because she's playing Janeway as we speak. So I think that's great. But if Season 3 had failed, none of this would have happened. And then we might get a Star Trek Archer, which would be equally as good. Because that show was prematurely cancelled, and I know who cancelled it. He's no longer worked for Paramount, CBS, UPS, whoever the dominant company is. I don't think it's Paramount. I think Paramount's owned by CBS, or CBS is owned by Paramount. I don't really know the structure, but there was a gap. The guy at the top of Paramount CBS at the time, a guy called Les Moonves, he didn't like Star Trek. Now, as an executive producer or a chief executive of a company, what you like and don't like shouldn't be a factor in the shows that you make, because if there's an audience there for it and you're going to make money from it, it shouldn't really matter if you like Star Trek or not. If it's a money spinner, it's kind of a no-brainer. So he cancelled Star Trek Enterprise, which was starting to take off in Season 3 and 4, as these things tend to do. But he swung the axe and he killed it. So, and it was the only Star Trek series. Well, the original series got cancelled after 3 years, but in the modern era, it was the only Star Trek series that didn't make 7 seasons. And the other thing I learned was Star Trek Deep Space Nine was actually going to get an 8th season, which is kind of unheard of, but they were going to give it an 8th season, but then it got cancelled, and I think they wrote some of the 8th season. In this documentary, they got the writers back in to plot out a 8th season as if it was being made today. So we're talking 20 years later. It'd have been like 23 years later now, and so they kind of plotted out like a season 8, not as if it was made like at the time, so it would have been 2000, 2001, where a real season 8 would have come. But made today, and they were like, oh well, so if it's 20 years on, your first character, who would be captain of the Defiant? And it could be Nog. So they put Nog as, and you're like, well, what about Kira? But remember, it's 20 years on. She's probably retired now, and they said that she, because she's a spiritual character, they said that she's probably behaving into her religion now that she's got the time. So they put her down as a Vedic, so Vedic Kira, which I thought was kind of an interesting spin on it, because I can't imagine Kira being retired from any of her front line roles. But you got to remember, the actress who plays Kira is probably in her 60s now. Now she could be like a general or something like that there and still be there, possibility, but they had her down as a Vedic. Now she's a spiritual leader of her people, which kind of makes sense, because if she couldn't be in the military anymore, being a spiritual person, we can see that makes sense. And then in their season 8, the whole arc behind it would be that Sisko comes back, but it was about how he comes back and what for and things like that there. So Jake Sisko would be in it. As I say, he'd probably be in his 30s now, 40s. It's been 20 years. Unfortunately, at the time of the documentary, the actor Aaron Einsberg, I think you call him, he was still alive. That's why they put him in there. And I think Rene Auberjonois, I can't say it now, he was still alive as well. That's why he was in it. But if they did bring back, see if they do in Star Trek Sisko, Nog's not going to be in it, and Odo's not going to be in it, and that's a massive loss to the show. But apparently, it's not going to be about Deep Space Nine and the things that went on there. It's going to be a different kind of a story, like Picard season 1 and 2, because Picard had no Patrick Stewart had no intentions of bringing the old gang back. But I think he thought, well, you know what I mean, this is the last time I'm going to play Picard, so let's have the band back together, the family back together, and it worked really well. So, and then I watched another documentary straight after it, where William Shatner, it's called The Captains, and he goes around and interviews all the characters who played Captain. So it includes, so himself obviously, then there's Captain Picard, Captain Sisko, Captain Archer, and also, I didn't actually think he would do this, but he actually interviewed Chris Pine, who played the younger version of Kirk. And I didn't really know what William Shatner's thoughts were on, you know, Captain Picard and, you know, things like, you know, does he have any interest or does he not like it? But he obviously does. I thought he would have an issue with Scott Bakula, because not the actor, but I thought he might have had an issue with Scott Bakula being the first captain of the Enterprise, because up until Enterprise, the first captain of the Enterprise is Captain Kirk. But that's not the case anymore, and I thought he would have an issue with that. But I was wrong. And I also didn't think I didn't know what his opinions were about Deep Space Nine, Voyager, but the fact that he interviewed them tells me that he likes the fact that the series has continued, his legacy has continued, and I like that, because I didn't think he had any interest in the other Star Treks, but he does. And I found it fascinating when he spoke to the other captains and stuff, and he actually admitted to himself that he was quite embarrassed about doing Star Trek, but he didn't realise that he was embarrassed because he wouldn't go to conventions for a long time because he thought they were a bit sad, and he thought the ones that were going to the conventions were mocking him, which isn't the case. He doesn't feel like that anymore. I think Patrick Stewart was a bit like that. He didn't think that these conventions were something that he should be doing. And why Shatner changed his mind is when one of the conventions, there was 15,000 people going, and he was like, if 15,000 people are going to a convention based on a show that I starred in, there's something going on here. So he went to his first convention in the 70s, and he's never looked back. But he admits that he was embarrassed, from an actor's point of view, as just against other actors in other things. He was embarrassed. Because he thought that other actors in other genres and that would look down on him, and Patrick Stewart had the same thing. As we know, Patrick Stewart is a crafted stage actor, but the level of work they put in, they were doing at least 12-hour days, and I'm saying at least. Sometimes they were doing 16-hour days, Monday to Friday. So it wasn't like they were working hard. They weren't working hard for the job. I think they thought there was a level of snobbery from other actors and going, yeah, but you were a Shakespearean actor. You're doing little sci-fi series. You know what I mean? There was that sort of thing. And Picard felt the same, but on the other hand, Patrick Stewart had said, and William Shatner heard this, Patrick Stewart said that he's brought all his experience as a Shakespearean actor, as a classical crafted actor, to Captain Picard, and that's what makes Captain Picard better than he ever could have been. And William Shatner was like, well, I brought everything that I've done as an actor to Captain Kirk. And then he started to see Star Trek as something different, and that was because Patrick Stewart lit the fire in William Shatner's belly and said, look, it's not a silly little Star Trek series. It's a body of work that you should be proud of that still stands the test of time 40, 50 years on. And William Shatner got it. He was like, yeah, I get it, I totally get it. And he probably feels ashamed that he felt ashamed about his role in Star Trek. So I found that quite fascinating, that the next captain after Shatner, the actor, actually gave William Shatner something to think about. And time kind of plays a factor in that, because the longer your legacy, the stronger it is. And both these actors have said this. They said they wouldn't have admitted it years ago, but now they said when they are no longer here, if all they're remembered for is being a captain in Star Trek, that they would die happy. Now, in the 80s and 90s, Patrick Stewart would never have said that. And then in the 60s and the 70s, William Shatner would never have said that either. And even the likes of Leonard Nimoy, who didn't want to come back and do the motion picture and the other films, he would be proud now. Because William Shatner's done other things. He's done T.J. Hooker, he did Boston Legal, he's been part of other franchises, but yet he said if all he's remembered for is playing Captain Kirk, he will die a happy man. And I just thought that was really good, because sci-fi now is not, it's not a look down on genre anymore. Same thing about geeks and scientists and things like that there. Like in the 80s and 90s, even before then, if you were a scientist or a geek, you were kind of looked down on. But now scientists and geeks are running the world. Look at your Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, what do you call the Facebook guy? These guys are like rock stars. They are running the world. And then, because in the 80s and 90s, a show like The Big Bang Theory would not have worked, but it does now. It does, because these guys are creating everything that we use. They're flying into space, they're doing all the cool stuff. Now geeks are like what jocks were. This is an American thing, it's not really something over here, but now it's the geeks that are getting the girls, it's the geeks that are earning the money. Yeah, it's fascinating what you learn watching a documentary. I didn't realise that William Shatner actually followed the careers of his fellow captains. I mean, I know like William Shatner was in the film Generations. But to be honest, I thought he just did that for the paycheck. I didn't realise that he still likes Star Trek, still likes his association with Star Trek, which is really good. But it took him a long time to get there, where he wasn't embarrassed by it. I promise you guys, I'm going to get a better lighting system. Although it looks great in this room, it seems a bit, it's hard to explain, it's hard to describe. It seems a bit very bluish and very washed out, but in reality, from my eyesight, this room is as bright as it could ever be. It's actually brighter than it would normally be. But yeah, it's fascinating what you discover in documentaries, because regarding Scott Bakula, they approached him about being in a Star Trek series, and he said no. He said, I'm not interested in being part of the Star Trek universe, being part of, I don't want to mess with that world that Kirk was from. And they said there was no hook for him because Star Trek has been done. So we had the original Next Generation and stuff, and it had been done, and he didn't see any value in it. He didn't see how it could be worthwhile to him. And they said to him, what about if you were the first captain? Because he was looking for a hook. That hadn't been done before, because we thought Captain Kirk was the first captain of the Enterprise. And that hook got Scott Bakula very interested. You're not only a Star Trek captain, a starship captain, you are actually the first captain. And that's something that Star Trek hadn't done. And Scott Bakula was like, yeah, I would like to be the first of something in Star Trek. That would be unique, and as soon as he knew that, he was on board. Now that I've finished Deep Space Nine, I will be rewatching Enterprise if I remember. I do usually have a lot of spinning plates when it comes to watching stuff. I dip in and out of stuff quite quickly. But I did enjoy Enterprise. It's very well made. It's a shame it stopped after 4 seasons. I don't like all the characters. I find the character of Malcolm quite annoying, as I did with Bashir. But the thing is, they fixed the problem with Bashir in a really clever way, and they didn't actually get time to fix Malcolm Reed because the show got cancelled. Oops, I've gone a bit too heavy-handed there. See how much of a big area this is? Really happy that I'm removing as much of the white as possible. Let's see if I can get my hand in here. Just finish this tip end. Yep, there we go. Spin it around again. Yeah, this is a huge section that I'm happy to do. Yeah, excuse the siren. As I said in previous videos, I don't really mind that I live here. In the centre of London. Not central, but the centre. There we go. Tidying up these lines. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see this Star Trek Cisco series. It'd be interesting to see where they go with it and how many seasons they do. I know Patrick Stewart committed to 3 of his, but he's a lot older than Avery Brooks. I think possibly Avery Brooks would probably just do 3 seasons. He might even just do 1. He's actually a tenured professor. Avery is. I think it's at Harvard, I'm not sure. Anyone that attends the university where he is at, just leave a note in the comment section. But he is a tenured professor. I don't know what subject he does. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. A Hollywood actor who was the face of a TV show in the 90s for 7 years. Its full run. Is an academic leader. I wonder if he's. I think he studies. I think he teaches acting. I think that's what he teaches. That kind of it would make sense. Although he could teach something else, you know. He may be gifted in other areas like science or mathematics or whatever it is. But I think. Do you recall? I think he teaches acting. And then before I came onto the video, I was watching another documentary with William Shatner, and this one was about the trouble, not with the Tribbles, the trouble with the Next Generation series and the troubles they had. Getting it off the ground behind the scenes. Things like after struggling for control of it, things like we lost a character, Denise Crosby left, halfway through because she felt like she was just standing there with one line here and there. And she felt creatively abandoned. So she left. I mean, she comes from a great line of actors. Her grandfather, Bing Crosby, and she actually left to go off and be a movie star, and unfortunately that didn't happen. And then at the end of season 1 they got rid of Beverly Crusher. Now, shock horror, how could they have done that when she's part of the Seven? Well, they did get rid of her. And they brought in, I can't remember what you call her, but she played Dr. Pulaski, who was actually in the original series. So they brought in Dr. Pulaski, but they were the writers or the people behind Star Trek. Apparently she didn't get on well with a lot of actors and stuff, and writers and things like that. So then she was let go at the end of season 2, where they brought Gates McFadden back, and history, and the rest is history. It's quite interesting that they got rid of Gates McFadden, but her son Wesley was still in the show, and I think they said that she was off teaching at the academy or something, but her son was like 15, and it was like, at 15 he should have been with his mum, but obviously they're not related in real life, and even though they let her go, they wanted to keep him, and he wanted to still be in the show. I mean, so by the end of season 2 we'd lost Beverly Crusher and Tasha Yar, and we lost Dr. Pulaski as well, and it was just like, it seemed like it was falling to bits. I mean, the beauty of the departure of Denise Crosby meant that Worf became his own character. As Tasha Yar was head of security, which I'm not sure that works. Now, somebody big and burly like Worf, he kind of looks like a bouncer at a nightclub that would throw you out. But I suppose you don't have to be. If you've got a phaser in your hand, it doesn't really matter how big and strong you are. But Tasha Yar was a good fighter. But so she was chief of security. But I think if Denise Crosby had stayed in it longer, she would have been given more. because Worf was given more, and Worf was happy to kind of take a paycheck and be famous just for being on Star Trek. But I think Denise Crosby, because she comes from the Crosby dynasty, I think she thought she was owed more, and it turned out that she didn't actually do much, and she did come back for cameos and things because she didn't become the big Hollywood actress that she thought she would be because of her family name. And I wonder if she regrets leaving, because they actually killed her off because she said, "I want out." So they killed her off, so there was no chance of her coming back. But then she was in Yesterday's Enterprise, and then she came back as a Romulan. So I'm wondering if she regretted leaving. And then she was in the end All Good Things. So I'm wondering if she did regret leaving, because they all loved her. They didn't want her to leave, but at the end of the day, because you see, Worf took over chief of security, and then his role got bigger towards the end of the season. He actually dated Deanna Troi at some point as well. So, and then you see, I wonder if Denise Crosby stayed, I wonder if they would have moved her across to Deep Space Nine. Probably not, because they wanted a Klingon, but you never know. I mean, Nana Visitor, who plays Kira, she wasn't the first choice for her either. They wanted, I don't know what her real name is, but they wanted the actress who played Ro Laren to play Kira, but I think I mentioned this in the video, she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to tie herself down to a long-running television show. She wanted to do other things, so like she dipped in and out. She dipped in and out of Next Generation. She was briefly in Battlestar Galactica Razor. She was briefly in The Killing, which I really did like. The American version of The Killing. I really did like that. So she's not one for sticking in with a long-running show, because she actually appeared in one of the early episodes of The Next Generation as a different character, and that's the way she wants it. She doesn't want to be a solid series character in a show. She wants to come in and do something and go out again. That's how I see her. Which, you know what I mean? Some actors want to do that, and some actors want to be a main character. She actually was a main character though in season 5, 6 and 7, but she wasn't in it that much. And I think after that she decided that she didn't want to be in a show all the time. So when they were writing for Deep Space Nine, they did approach her and ask her if she would like to play, because obviously she wouldn't have played Major Kira, she would have played herself. She would have played Ro Laren, because it would make sense, because it's a Bajoran that we know, that we're familiar with. And that's what they wanted. They wanted a very tough Bajoran. And having her and O'Brien as a hook from The Next Generation, they were hoping it would help. I mean, I think they could only offer her like the character they wanted her to play would have to be a main character and would have to be in pretty much every episode, and I think after doing Next Generation she didn't want to bind herself into one show, so she's actually been in a lot of different shows, but only for certain periods of time. Like Razor, Battlestar Galactica Razor was kind of it's almost like a spin-off few episodes about a ship. I'm not sure if the ship was called the Razor, I'm not really sure, but she was there to tell a story about that, and then the show would continue. Oh, that's really thick now. Thick and globby, we don't like that. I think the actress who played Ro Laren actually liked the fact that she was not liked on the bridge. I think she was a member of the Maquis. I think she was. And the Maquis cannot be trusted. Let me get this end bit. And Riker really didn't like her. Okay, so I'm going to finish this video up here now, and thank you for your company, and I'll see you in the next video.